It's
Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys.
welcome to Hey You Guys podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this is Dave. And this week we watched 1984's Red Dawn. So it's 1984, and America has become the red-headed stepchild of the rest of the world. What better time to invade than now? What better place to start than Calum Woods, Colorado? An invading force consisting of Soviet, Cuban, and Nicaraguan soldiers descend on this quaint town and quickly enslave its population. With the rest of America creating a border, the town is on its own. But that's okay. The enemy may have met their match in the form of the Wolverines, a bunch of high school kids, and Patrick Swayze, carrying out guerrilla tactics to make the invading force's time in Colorado a miserable one. Now, me and Dave have actually watched this film a number of times. We watched it as kids. We've always enjoyed this film. But Liam, this is your first watching of this film.
Yes. Unbelievably, this was a really odd blind spot in my 80s movies catalogue. Because obviously, I'm aware of the movie and it's got a huge number of stars. It's got my beloved Leah Thompson in it. But yeah, for some odd reason, not only had I never seen it, I had literally not seen a minute of it. Because it never seemed to be on TV. I'd never kind of really come across it in the video store back when I was younger. So yeah, this is my first time watching the movie. I think I was put off briefly by the fact that there was already a remake in 2012 and that got absolutely panned. So that just kind of pushed this further and further down the list. Yeah. And now that I have seen it, I'm not convinced I'm over the moon having seen it. But equally, as I said, it's one of those interesting ones because so much of this podcast is, the idea at least is, okay, do these films hold up? And, we have a big problem usually in terms of, okay, can we separate our nostalgia from the reality of today? And I guess today we can do that because you have all the nostalgia, I have none. So I guess the more interesting question is, did you genuinely love this movie growing up, the both of you? And do you still feel quite strongly about it now?
Well, we will get into all that. I will let Dave speak in a second. But you mentioned Leah Thompson. I have to ask a question about Leah Thompson, right? What was she going through in 84, 85, and 86?
Oh, rough couple of years.
To have the weird, I want to sleep with inappropriate people moment. In this, she wants to sleep with Powers Booth, who is like her granddad. Then she wants to fuck her future son in Back to the Future. And then obviously she wants to fuck a duck.
It gets progressively worse. The only thing, God knows what she made in 1987, but needless to say, it wasn't released.
No.
They were just like, dude, we can't release that. Where'd you go after the duck situation? But yeah, she had a rough couple of years there. Don't get me wrong. She looked absolutely fantastic doing it. And I actually think she looks maybe the best she's ever looked in this movie. She's so incredibly pretty in this movie.
Not allowed to speak. Sorry, anyway, Dave,
before you move on, that is officially where the phrase "fuck a duck" comes from.
Is Howard the Duck?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Liam asked a question about nostalgia. So for you, do you still love this film generally?
I love this film. Yeah, and I always have done. And I know you're saying, Liam, it's not a world-beating story. I mean, there is very little story to it.
Little story.
I think the reason that me and Wes love it so much is growing up as children of the 80s and 90s, we always played with guns. We're running around the streets. My loft now looks like the scene in Commando where he's going shopping. There were just guns everywhere,
claymores everywhere.
Yeah, grenades. So to me, watching this film where there were kids a little bit older than me fighting in wars, and it was brilliant. And you grow up now and you think not quite so romantic as I remember it being, but
yeah,
it was just what we loved at the time. So to see a movie that was almost made for us, it was fantastic.
You actually make a really good point there, and it's something obviously I struggle with, watching this for the first time as a 40-year-old. But yeah, suddenly, I'm trying to put myself in that position. If I'd watched it when I was, say, 13, 14, and, at that age, you're still obsessed with guns in that kind of childish way. And then suddenly seeing, kids, like you say, almost your age, taking on an entire invading army. I mean, the most useless army this side of Valverde. It's absolutely ridiculous. The first half of this, because obviously I didn't know where it was going. And for the first half of the movie, I was like, wait a minute, are these 6 kids legitimately going to take on the entirety of the Russian and Cuban army?
And these 6 kids, mind, they keep arguing amongst each other, but then stop arguing for the split second so they can hide in foxholes, kill a bunch of soldiers, and then start arguing again. That is in their entire life. And did you notice as well, a lot happened in October and November? Like September, they invaded. In October, Robert killed a deer, drank its blood. He felt power. Then
That's a weird scene. We got to spend some time on that one.
Then in October, they found out what was going on. They went to see their dad. He has the best line in the film ever.
Oh, another absolutely essential scene, I might add, with Harry Dean Stanston. There we go.
Avenge me! Avenge me!
Oh my God.
And then they get Tia. I was going to say Tia Leone. What the fuck's her name again? We just said it.
Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson. Oh, Jesus Christ. And Jennifer Grey, right? Again, another one who doesn't speak. And then they've killed a bunch of soldiers and stuff. And then it gets to November. Like, so much shit happened in like 2 weeks.
Well, the weirdest thing about it is usually we think, well, if they were kind of cutting through this time and it keeps cutting forward and all these things have happened, you would think that would be in the service of character development. However, this movie has zero character development. And I mean fucking
it does have
zero.
One. It does have
one. There is one.
Okay, are we going to be the same? Robert goes from C. Thomas Howell.
C. Thomas Howell,
Robert goes from a timid boy to an absolute fucking monster.
Immediately.
Honestly.
Yeah, but he does so. All his character development is in the first 15 minutes. He cries like a little bitch, like C. Thomas Howell always does. I've never liked C. Thomas Howell. And then just out of nowhere, he's like, "Well, I'm a murder machine now. I'm the next Rambo." It's really quite ridiculous. And I think maybe if they kind of spread that out over the whole movie, you could see him becoming more and more unhinged. Because, the second half of this movie does kind of hint at an almost Lord of the Flies-like situation. It never quite gets there, but it hints towards it. And that's pretty much all this movie ever does, is hints towards things, except for explosions, of course. It has loads of those. But C. Thomas Howell, because he becomes a psycho so quickly, it just means that for the next, because this movie's, best part of 2 hours.
Yeah, an
hour. For the next 90 minutes, he's just a psycho. And that's it. And no one, you would say Patrick Swayze had a bit of character development. Not really. Charlie Sheen does nothing. Leah Thompson just wants to fuck an old man. It's bizarre.
Where was Patrick Swayze going? He dropped off his brother and the friend, drove off, and then in the space of Frank McRae, who was the angry sergeant in 48 Hours that we've already covered, the teacher, in the space of him getting killed, he's come back. Like, was he just waiting outside the gates or something?
Well, I'd imagine he saw people falling from the sky and thought, that's probably not right. I'll go and get my brother.
What was going on with those parachutes? They were the worst parachutes I've ever seen.
Or the oil drums full of machine guns. Like, they just dropped oil drums full of machine guns.
Okay, well, I've got to ask you, because my biggest question about this film is, right, growing up, obviously, like I said, I didn't watch this film, but I was very much aware of it. And in my mind, I was like, oh, well, it was all about the Russians invading Colorado and the kids fighting back. Only the entirety of the Russian army appears to be Cuban, as far as I can tell. I can't remember seeing a single Russian.
So it's 3. Have you got the... So I think Dave will be able to find... It's the sprawl at the beginning. And I think there's a map as well that tells you... I'm just talking now while Dave looks for it. But... I said in my intro at the beginning, it's Soviet Union, Cuba, and Nicaragua. But
there surely would have been more Russian soldiers. I get why there were Cubans and Nicaraguans there because of the geopolitical kind of, outline that they gave at the start of this film. It's a bit odd, but whatever. I'm willing to go with it. But you still think predominantly, because Russia would have been the powerhouse in this situation, that most of the soldiers there would have been Russian. And then fucking none of them are.
The start of the invasion, they flew over what they could. So initially, if you notice, they're Russian speaking. Then after that, they're all Cuban and Nicaraguans because geologically, they all walked through. So Powers Booth sort of explained it.
Oh, where they started in Mexico.
It started in Mexico, and they walked through because they'd taken all the defenses out.
Oh, my God. That sequence, how much damage did that do to border relations? Do you think that line did? Where, you think there's all these people in Texas. Like, let's be clear, this movie is already Republicans' wet dream, certainly in the first half. Like, listen, I told you, you don't let it cross those goddamn Mexicans because they're all goddamn Cubans trying to go across and start World War motherfucking 3. It's like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. Joe, sorry. If all the Russian soldiers' mind were like Yuri, who was wearing his dad's jacket, his dad's army jacket. Yuri was the guy who translated the plaque and found
badly
Indian arrow, right? If they were all like him, mind, you're glad for some Cuban and Nicaraguan soldiers because my God, that guy was terrible.
It was a bit Carry On, wasn't it?
Yeah. Although has he got bulletproof skin? Because he managed to take a lot of shots, still get to the car, and take a shot in the face from Patrick Swayze. Yes, I'm saying it like that. Fair enough.
You're sticking with that.
Yeah.
You're sticking with shot to the face.
I would like to talk about that scene again, but just going back to what we were talking about, at the opening credits, it says the Soviet Union suffers the worst wheat harvest in 55 years. Labor and food riots in Poland. Soviet troops invade. Cuba and Nicaragua reach troop strength of 500,000. El Salvador and Honduras fall. The Green Party gains control of West Germany and demands the withdrawal of nuclear weapons from Europe. Mexico plunges into revolution. NATO dissolves. The United States are alone. So you can see the pattern of what's happened. Europe's basically fallen to shit. Russia's taken power in parts of Eastern Europe. And you've got the massive troop power of Cuba and Nicaragua just walking through a completely,
dilapidated United States, basically.
And they've just walked in with 500,000 men,
Or floated in, as it were. It's still strange. I think for being that it was the first time I'd watched it, it was a lot to take in because there was that massive info dump. Then you just have, it goes straight to a classroom and, floating Nicaraguans and Cubans, whatever it is. And this is all, remember, like...
else, do they? For the rest of the film. It's just up to you to sort of...
You're in the kids' shoes. You're in their shoes. You live as much as they live. I mean...
Which I don't mind, actually.
No, exactly.
I agree.
To the point where they're given a frozen radio, and you're probably thinking the same as them. How am I going to work a frozen radio?
Well, it wouldn't. It would just be broken. It's such a stupid scene. I mean, there are plenty of stupid scenes in this movie.
But it's probably in a plastic bag, isn't it? Don't overthink it too much.
Well, you really shouldn't overthink too much.
I've been on this podcast before. Don't overthink it too much.
Well, I got to be like, the tone of this movie is really bizarre because, as I said, the first half in particular feels like kind of across, it's almost like Team America stuff, in the first half. And then like the second half suddenly becomes this like dark rumination on the impact of war on youth. And I'm just not ready for that sudden like as soon as one of them dies, suddenly like everyone dies almost immediately. And this is all on the backdrop of, again, coming from the base that I'd never seen this before. The first thing you see are those opening credits, and they're so 80s. When it says Red Dawn on screen, it literally looks like a BMX movie. I was like, oh, well, this is going to be fun. And it is fun for a bit, but then it does get surprisingly dark. It's just a shame that when it does come around to the actual impacts of war, when the kids actually start, dying, despite the fact that there's really successful guerrilla group, which never increases in number. Like nobody ever joins them. It's like, no. It's just the 6 Wolverines or whatever it is. It's super dumb, but whatever.
Try and get more. The old couple do try and say, there's some kids who could join you. And Jed says, we can't feed the ones we've got.
Yeah. It's a bit ridiculous.
They're not trying to turn it into Defiance today, where it turns into a massive commune in the forest.
I agree with you, though, because
they're doing the thing.
It does get dark. Like when they give them when the old guy gives them Leah Thompson and Jennifer Grey and says they tried to have their way with them.
No one puts baby in the basement.
Yeah, apparently.
I had to say that.
Good point.
The look on your face as you wanted to say, you're so happy. like the soldiers wanted to have their way with them. And then every time you see one of these females on their own planting a bomb, the guy in the tank, like if he was on his own, I'm pretty sure his trousers would have dropped as soon as he had a chance. Yeah. And then that guy outside, I wrote it down. What was the where she bombed the? Oh, I had the Soviet American Friendship Center. Like that is the best. Where did they get that sign? Like they had that sign ready to go.
That came down. Like all the guys like parachuting in, and one guy was like carrying the sign with him. He jumped out.
It was on his back. He did it like a wing. He just glided down.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. But no, actually, it is tonally bizarre. And the one thing I thought it was lacking, especially the first half, before I knew where it went. And maybe tonally it wouldn't work with the second half. But my big issue is just how quickly, and we have alluded to this, is how quickly they become this like unkillable murder unit, essentially, who are fighting, let's not forget, an army, a trained army. And they are just taking out just fucking mountains of these Russians and Cubans with zero impact on their group. Like for the first half of the film, they must take out 200 Russians or, invading army members, whatever you want to call them, with zero injuries. It's absolutely ridiculous. And there's no sequence. Like, this movie, for the love of God, needed that montage where it's just them getting slightly better, trying to kill one person, trying to kill another. Instead, there's one scene when they're slightly clumsy. But then after that, not only are they like absolutely fantastic at what they do, but they're just armed to the teeth. I assume it's because they steal the stuff.
But that's what I want to say. I will emphasize to the point that I do still enjoy this film. I enjoyed this rewatch as much as I've enjoyed the watches previously.
I totally get that.
But I've always questioned, and I know it's hinted at they just get it from previous kills and all that, but where they get their equipment, like where they get their claymores, their RPGs.
Oh, not so much.
So
that.
many
RPGs.
RPGs.
Clean snowsuits from.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
because if they're getting them off dead people, they're good at laundry.
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, they were like, by the end they're kitted out like fucking G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
They've got like special like white suits. I don't know why they're going to really be that useful, other than the fact they look cool. And they've got an absurd number of weapons. When there's that ridiculous sequence at the end, and I appreciate we are jumping back and forth a bit, when Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, who literally has no character development, like in a film where nobody has character development, he somehow has like minus character development.
He's got no character.
No,
at
he
all.
has no character at all.
They
His
put him on
character
screen
is
and said, "Be Charlie Sheen."
I mean, he's young at the time.
Yeah,
wasn't he?
just be because was The Outsiders before this? It was, wasn't it?
The Outsider was before this, yeah.
So he'd already teamed up with Patrick Swayze previously before, and they were brothers in that one, weren't they? I believe.
I think I haven't seen The Outsiders for a long time, but
so yeah, and it's literally they just said, "Be Charlie Sheen." Like, just be Patrick Swayze.
He hardly even got a chance to do that. He's hardly a human being. And I mean, I'll get into the fact that, the fact that Danny survived at the end of this film, we'll get to that in a minute, because I still need to get my fucking head around that. If Charlie Sheen is a non-character, somehow Danny is one rung down the ladder even from Charlie Sheen. And somehow
pisses in the car, right?
Yeah, he's the one. I think he's the one. Well, basically, Danny surviving at the end of this movie is like Porkins making the trench run in Star Wars, or like Hawkins killing the Predator instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what it feels like. Danny surviving to the end of this film. It's ridiculous.
So you've said about the jumps, right? And I'm sorry, I'm jumping right to the end now because you've already said Predator. The end credits. The Soldier of Fortune end credits on this film. Like, it's black and white. These are your heroes. Yeah, they all doing... Predator has those smiles. At the end of it, everyone's giving a thumbs up. But this is literally like trading cards.
Yeah, like you're walking through a museum. Yeah. These are the heroes of World War III. But yeah, sorry, to get back to when you have that sequence when Charlie Sheen and Patrick Swayze go on to take on the remainder of, I don't know, the Cuban National Front, whatever the hell you want to call it. There is a point when Charlie Sheen is walking across screen and he is kitted out like John Matrix from Commando. It's bananas. He's got I don't think there's another film which has this many rocket launchers in it. Everybody gets a rocket launcher. Everybody. But in that last sequence, he looks like he's carrying two. Of course, the other issue at that point is I don't really know what they're trying to achieve. Like, I don't know why. Is it Bella, the one of the bad guys, lets them go at the end?
Colonel, yeah.
Don't know why he lets him go. Don't know why. Don't really get why the other guy is supposedly the big bad. I don't know why Patrick Swayze delivers his one line, so he gives the opportunity for him to shoot him first. It's a terrible ending to an admittedly enjoyable film, but a really bad ending.
The only one I can answer, I don't know if you can answer, because that was a lot of questions coming from Liam there, but the only one I can answer really is the Colonel it's hinted that he became disillusioned with the whole thing. It's like when they killed Robert and they were saying, "Oh, we took out 12 men." He's like, no, we took out one dude. Do you know what I mean? Stop trying to just make this shit worse or make it better for morale and stuff. It's we've killed one boy.
He says it in his letter, doesn't he? He's writing a letter to his girlfriend's wife, whatever, saying that, he grew up being a freedom fighter, but he's not a freedom fighter anymore. He's fighting somebody else's war. So he says that he's going to hand his commission in and he's going to walk away.
Oh, well, I've got a pretty good explanation for this. I was watching this online and it didn't have subtitles. So there were a lot of sections where they were talking. I was like, I wonder what they're saying. It turns out
so there's a lot where you're going, what the fuck is going on?
So that's the explanation for that.
Fair enough.
He's not... he's not a murderer. He's not there for anything other than he wants to liberate his country, make everything better. He thinks America's evil, and he's going to make that better. But he's getting there, and they're just killing children now. So he wants to leave. He's going to go. So when he has the chance to shoot them, he can tell they're pretty much done. So there's no point.
Yeah.
So he puts his gun down. He's not Spanish, is he? He's an African American.
Yeah,
I was looking at. He's in a lot of
blaxploitation.
70, blaxploitation.
He was the drug dealer guy in Superfly.
Yeah,
but did you get the context as well, or his second in command was basically in love with him? Did you like the way his the way his second in command would stare at him all the time, and that's ironic saying stare when he got blinded by a rocket.
Yeah, don't run behind a rocket.
An RPG flash at the end, like he's about to shoot him, and then he's blinded.
Worst ending for a character ever.
Yeah,
it's pretty pony, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm blind.
But yeah, sorry.
That's the only thing. Like the 10-minute questions you just gave them, I can only answer one of them.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. Well, that is the thing. There are a lot of, you can throw a lot of questions to this film, and a lot of it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. But like you said, even coming to it now, that's not to say I didn't enjoy this film. It's ludicrous for sure, but there's something enjoyably ludicrous. The only thing I will say is I just wish that the action was better, because this film clearly isn't cheap. Like, there's no helicopter more impressive than a Hind, as we all know from Rambo 3.
Not a Hind, unfortunately.
Is it not a Hind? It looked like a Hind.
It's a Puma with wings stuck to the side of it.
Okay, was it pretending to be a Hind?
It was, yeah.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Okay, I can live with that.
Same helicopters used in Rambo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you think about like Hind in Rambo 3, it almost felt like a character in that movie, the way it was like shot going over the land, like fantastic stuff. And in this, one of the reasons Rambo 3, when it was originally released, it was the most expensive movie ever made. And a big part of that was getting in...
Killed Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, you had to kill Afghanistan. But a big part of that is getting in this military equipment, because, of course, there wasn't a CG. If you wanted the helicopter, you had to get a helicopter. So naturally, in this movie, you see 2 helicopters. That means there's 2 fucking helicopters. And clearly, a bit of money is being spent. But it just doesn't equate to what we see on the screen. The action just never feels impactful. And it's really bizarre, because I would have never thought watching it. When I saw it, of course, there's like some action sequences. But not for a second I think this movie was particularly violent. But supposedly, when it was released, Red Dawn was considered the most violent film ever by the Guinness Book of Records and the National Coalition on Television Violence, which is a thing.
Give you facts, it's too early. What's wrong with you?
So supposedly there's a rate of 134 acts of violence per hour, or 2.23 per minute, which is a lot. There's even a carnage counter on the DVD. Sorry for stealing your facts. But... My point being...
You would say they probably spent the money on volume rather than quality?
But it is loud. But I guess my point being is, like, when you watch this film, do you think of it as being violent?
Sorry?
Do you think of it as being a particularly violent film? Because
no,
it doesn't come across like that at all.
I call it desensitized, call it whatever you want. Ever since
I've been PG,
watching this as a kid, I didn't feel it was violent. I want to go back, because you keep saying how expensive it was. It was only a $17 million movie.
But $17 million in 1984.
38, but even in 1984, 17 million isn't that much. I mean, but you could see it as well in the practical effects. There's no CG. There's actually no flames. Like no explosions, no fireballs in this fucking film.
There's one massive explosion.
Yeah, when they're at the petrol station, they're filling up, and a big fireball goes off, and then there's an explosion about 10 minutes later.
Okay, so I'll rewind. There's one fireball in this
And
film.
you're forgetting the other sequence when they kind of carpet bomb the mountains in front of them, when they're going to actual war for the first time with Powers Booth.
And
they're like napalming it, almost looks like the kind of hillside. Right. And again, I feel like that's where all the budget went to. I know you're saying...
There are 2 fireballs in this fucking thing. But the rest of them, right, it's like when the grenades go off and all that, it's just a puff of smoke. Or when
speaking of...
Sorry, that's how grenades work.
Yeah, I know it's how grenades work, but not on screen.
We talked about this earlier. This isn't The Simpsons. You can't flip a sofa and it turns into fire.
And the RPGs, right? I sent you a picture earlier on of the RPG going into one of the tanks, and I clearly saw the guide wire, and that kind of takes everything away from me when you see the guide wire of the missile.
It does. But the thing is, like, even with the action sequences, they're not shot with any dynamism at all. Like, there's one sequence, speaking of grenades, where Powers Booth, I don't quite know what they're trying to do to this plane, but at one point there's a guy in the front of it He flips him the bird, shows him the grenade that he's going to throw into his plane. The guy is as calm as a Hindu cow. I have never seen anybody so nonplussed about a grenade about to be thrown into the vehicle they're singing. He just sits there like, I'm not sure if he's having his kind of heroic moments, starts singing like, Russian national anthem in his head, which to this day, I can't see it as anything other than Drago's theme, but whatever. But yeah, that whole sequence when he flips him the bird and stuff, it's so bizarre and so poorly
he
shot.
Puts on an electric heater behind him.
Yes.
Because it's just this orange glow before anything happens.
I would have said it was a torch. Like he chucked it on, he chucked it into the engine. All of a sudden there's an orange glow, and you could clearly count like 2 seconds before anything happens. And then the explosion happens, and there's no body flying out of that, by the way.
And there's the other aeroplane where he throws a grenade into the engine, and for some reason, the whole aeroplane tilts backwards.
That's the bit I mean, sorry.
So heavy that it lifted it off his wheels.
It was when you're talking about the helicopters as well, you both geeked out and said the name of it. It was just a helicopter. But when Robert shoots it with the RPG...
I love we have 3 different levels here. It's a helicopter. It's a Hind. Oh, no. It's not a Hind. It's actually 2 helicopters pretending to be a Hind. We've got 3 different levels of interest in helicopters here.
Don't fuck with this guy and war
Absolutely
machines.
not.
That's all I'm saying. He will cut your knees out. I know, as we're looking around. But when Robert shoots the helicopter, it's still able to land. He shot this thing with a fucking RPG.
I think he shot a man with an RPG because he fell out.
Everyone gets shot with an RPG. Whenever they could use a handgun in this film, they use an RPG. It's insane. And yet still the action feels just like really flat to me. And it's never more so. And of course, I think that is the perfect combination when it all comes together, when I'm like, okay, this should be visually spectacular and should have an emotional impact, is when C. Thomas Howell's character dies. That moment should feel like fucking Platoon. But instead, you've got him needlessly shooting at 2 helicopters. We know how this is going to end. He just stands there, and then it feels like there's this like small array of bullets. You never really get the feel that he's actually being hit. And the whole shot is mega clumsy and just has 0 impact. But that is something that runs all the way through the film. Whenever a character dies, you just don't care. Especially with Jennifer Grey, which again is another bonkers scene. Like she's like, what is it? Patrick Swayze's like, oh no, I can't kill you, I can't shoot you, but here's a grenade, you can blow yourself to fucking bits. What the hell is going on?
I mean, I don't know your personal lives, boys, but have you ever checked to see if somebody is dead by wrenching their hair up? Because the way he checked to see if Jennifer Grey was alive, he wrenched her by the hair and then he blew up.
It's the Russian way.
So
roll her over, do something. He grabbed her by a handful of hair and just yanked. Like that was.
It's true. And I still get around the fact I had no idea that Leah Thompson or Jennifer Grey were in this movie. Like literally, I had no. I just
know they were in this movie.
I don't think any. You could literally, if it wasn't for the fact that they were so pretty, you would just forget. And that's what happens to all the guys. As I said, I had to look up the name of that guy because it's Leah Thompson and Danny who survive at the end. Yeah, is that correct?
Danny,
yeah. What does Danny do? Like, I couldn't remember Danny doing a single thing in the entire movie. He was just there at the end. I was like, really? Danny survived?
He pissed in the radiator. Fucking very good aim, by the way, as well, because he had to stand there. I know he was the shortest, but he still had to piss into a nice little radiator cap.
If we're going into war, then I'm filling up the radiator because I have the capacity and the aim. I'm definitely I can fill up multiple vehicles if need to be. Just so you know.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. But I mean, we mentioned earlier some of the stranger scenes in this film. And we did allude to the bizarre relationship that Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen have with their father, Harry Dean Stanton. That whole sequence I found especially disturbing. I don't know how old they're supposed to be. I mean, Patrick Swayze looks like he's about 32. And when they keep coming up and they're like, Daddy,
15, 19,
Daddy,
something like that.
That took me well out of the film. Daddy.
And then Harry Dean Stanton goes on this whole speech then about, oh, I treated you boys like shit, but now you know why. Harry Dean Stanton knew the Russians and the Cubans were going to invade America, and that's why I treated you like shit as kids, because of this inevitable eventuality.
All Americans knew it was coming. They still do. They're still waiting.
And yeah, but you said it earlier on as well. He shows so little emotion But then just out of the blue, Boris, avenge me! And it's just like, where did that line come from? But again, was that supposed to be character development? I don't know. Instead, what it felt like was a really, really weird, like, scene with an old dude.
Can I ask? So you raised a good question about the mum. Do you want to ask that question?
Yeah. When after they witnessed their father being killed, they have this sort of memorial rock, and they put their dad's name on the rock. But they'd already been to see the dad and said, well, where's mum? And he's like, no, like, they killed his mum. Why didn't they put her name up on the rock? It's like, we didn't watch her get murdered, so she doesn't deserve to be on the rock.
And she didn't teach him how to hunt deer and drink its blood and stuff.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, because Republicans don't care about women unless they're hot like Lieutenant Jennifer Grey. That's about it, sadly. But
welcome to the Hey You Guys Politics Hour.
well, the politics in this film are bizarre. That that Afghanis are good, the Chinese are good. Supposedly the only people fighting on their side are England. No mention, not the UK, England. Like the Welsh and Scottish and the Irish, they wanted nothing to do with them, but the English were fighting the
corner. Know anyone else, do they? They think the whole thing is England.
They pretty much do, yeah. But I mean, we've got to talk about that sequence. I mentioned the fact that the second half in particular kind of hints at this almost Lord of the Flies-esque kind of narrative, which never quite gets off the ground. But it does have the deer sequence. I don't know why they suddenly turn into hippies. Maybe it's just because they had Patrick Swayze on the cast. But they're like, you've got to drink the blood of the deer. Is that true? Do people fucking do that?
Well, the Native Americans used to, that was the whole point of it.
Yeah.
But I was expecting them. I still do to this day. I've seen this film like 5, 6, 7 times in my life.
Shut up!
I've
seen it more than that.
All right, calm down. I'm still expecting them to go, taking the piss. Do you know what I mean? It'd be something you do to a mate, isn't it? You got to drink its blood. You got to wear his dick around your neck. You know what I mean? You've got to do something. Like it's just something to take the piss out of. It is an insane. And he's drinking. He's going, it's not bad. It's not bad. But what was it?
He wants to be one of the boys, doesn't he?
What was it Charlie Sheen said? It tastes like a nosebleed and a rare steak.
It's like a rare steak and a nosebleed,
yeah.
Stop that, right? I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never drunk.
I've never drunk a glass of blood before, so yeah, I have no idea. I'm just gonna have to believe Charlie Sheen on that.
And I always asked, did they kill Bambi or Bambi's mum?
Bambi's mum, surely.
Yeah. Just take.
You got to finish the job, don't you?
Yeah.
Like if you kill Bambi's mum, then Bambi's got to go.
And you've got to scream Wolverines when you're doing it.
Oh, speaking of Wolverines, I know screamed at the beginning. How much spray paint did they have?
Yeah.
Like in the end of the world, they've got enough spray paint to put Wolverines on every fucking thing.
Yeah, it's very odd that they can't seem to steal. They can steal spray paint, they can steal guns, but they can't seem to steal food. And considering how professional they're supposed to be, the way they freak out over food, and rather than kind of snatch it up in the very conveniently placed box that is there, no, they just start eating it on the street like a bunch of fucking infants.
Were you expecting that to be poisoned as well?
Me too. Yeah, 100%.
Father-in-law, and that's the first thing he said. But it's poisoned.
Yeah,
but no,
and then
they just sort of hung around. They got shot by helicopters.
Yeah. Yeah, because like at this point, they've wasted the first half of the movie, like a bunch of action set pieces, and they haven't killed anyone because at that point it's Team America. And then the second half, they're like, well, we want to kill off everyone, but like individually, like a scene each, again, kind of like Predator, I suppose. And that would, like, you could see it coming. They're just having too much of a good time. Although if somebody squeezed sticky ass orange onto my head, I'd be like, dude, cut that the fuck out. It's like, like if it was like a bit of water, but getting orange squeezed onto your head, dude, that's lame. That's a dickhead move as far as I'm concerned.
What the fuck were wheat checks or wherever the fuck?
Oh yeah,
cereal
those weird ass cereal.
Was eating. What was that shit? That looked dry as fuck.
I mean, basically, I can only assume the British equivalent would be eating dry shreddies. Yeah. Within, there's no, like, how hungry do you have to be before? And let's be clear, you've got like a whole box of fruit and everything. Be like, no, I'm going to eat this whole box of shreddies dry. Like, wow, dude, that is rough going. But yeah, to Dave's point, it is bizarre that they just sit there waiting to be shot. And you know it's coming. You're like, well, surely someone's going to show up and just blast them. And that's what's... And it's such a shame, again, because Jennifer Grey, isn't it?
Yeah. The orange squeezer.
Yeah, she has nothing to do other than be a dick. She sets a few bombs, but she does nothing as a character, and then she dies in the lamest way. You just while eating an orange. Just like, oh, come on, man. At least
Jennifer Grey or Leah Thompson that said to Charlie Sheen, if you ever talk to me, it was Leah Thompson. Yeah. You ever talk to me like that again, you don't know what we've been through or whatever it was. Yeah. I don't know, he said was you do the dishes. No, I'm not saying what crawl of your butt.
Yeah, she gets very defensive about that.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, she actually looks the most convincing, and maybe it's just because she looks pretty. But when she's wearing that beret and stuff,
You are
like
obsessed with Leah Thompson.
well, she's just very pretty, and like the way she wears the beret and stuff should be ridiculous, but instead it just looks cool. And she's the only one. She has like a certain, again, in that kind of 80s, still making a pretty way. Like, she has like a slightly weather-worn face. Like, she has been in the shit, whereas everyone else just looks, for the most of the film, everyone just looks like a fresh-faced 80s movie star until the very last sequence when they make Patrick Swayze look like he's almost dead. Like, they drain all the color from his skin for that moment when he's carrying Charlie Sheen in his arms.
She has the stare, doesn't she? She doesn't
She really does.
focus too much. So she's got that 1,000-yard stare that she's been in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the thing is, you need that. Like, you need
She fucked a duck.
Yeah.
Not yet.
but she can see into the future. She's like, what's in my future? Ducks. Anthropomorphic
and
ducks.
fucking my son, or wanting to fuck my son.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, she's at it. Well, that's the weird thing, because she gets it pretty rough because she doesn't actually fuck her son and she doesn't actually fuck the duck. But everyone feels like she kind of did both,
And fuck Powers Booth. And Powers Booth wanted her as well. Like, he wanted to fuck a 15-year-old.
He totally did. He totally did.
Yeah,
So
what happens in war stays in war.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
Well, as I said, weird politics in this film, that's for sure. But yeah, there is, I mean, it was kind of like the whole, when we were watching Howard the Duck, I don't quite know where the line was in this film. I feel like I'd need to watch it again. But Howard the Duck it felt like there was one movie, and then I think we mentioned, like, they got to the lab, and then it became a completely different movie for the second half of the film. And it was just defined by them showing up at the lab. That was the cutoff point. In this movie, is there like a clear cutoff point? Because in my head, I was like, oh, well, that first half of the movie is just over now because this is a completely different, much darker movie. And I was just, like everything else, I feel like, you could have had a more gradual build-up. The same with them getting trained up. Maybe if they lost someone a bit earlier, I don't know. But instead, it was kind of like, war is fun, and then war is hell. And I'm just not convinced it worked. Which, again, it feels like we're shitting on this film nonstop, but it still is fun, just to be clear.
There's lots to pick holes in. I'm not saying it's perfect. As I was saying to Wes earlier, the film has very little story to it. So you kind of just got to go for the ride. Enjoy. If you enjoy it, if you don't, you don't. It's tough. But the way I see it, it's 3 parts. There's the first part, the middle part, and the end part. But the first
classic 3-act structure,
the first part gets to the point I was trying to raise was up until the point where they first make contact with the 3 Russian guys. They've just been hiding in the woods, doing stuff that they know what to do. Mm-hmm. That's the point where they realize, oh, we're now going to have to fight. But you see that they are a bunch of children because they don't know what they're doing, because they're all falling over. They're all running in front of each other when they're shooting. And it's just an absolute shit show. The only reason that they managed to do it is because there's more of them than the Russians. And for some reason, the Russians panic more than they do.
And the Russians can't move because they were all wearing their dad's coats, which is like 3 sizes bigger than
That's
them.
a very Russian thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are incredibly inept, but you bring up a great point, and it was something that I kind of spotted over and over again in this movie, is that even later on, when you're supposed to believe that they're somehow this well-trained, well-oiled unit taking on the Russian army, they just keep running in front of each other. I'm like, if the Russians don't kill you, surely you're just going to kill each other, you lunatic.
The thing they do really well, I wouldn't say that they were well trained or well drilled, but they never actually get into direct confrontation with them. So they don't go face to face. They don't go running around too much. They go from high vantage points and just ambush.
Yeah.
So, anyone can just point a machine gun and start spraying around and hope you can hit someone.
They never.
So that's kind of the middle part of the film.
Yeah,
I think they cut their teeth accidentally by being found. They then progress being, tying together, knowing what each other wants by doing these ambushes and being tucked away and never actually coming into contact. And then but the last sort of set is once Powers Booth dies, it kind of almost feels like he came in and was giving them a bit of structure. Now he's gone. They don't really know what to do. 1 or 2 of them die and they think, fuck it, let's just go for it.
He died in the weirdest way possible as well, because there seems to be some sort of tank battle where the Americans are on the American side. We're now in Soviet, Nicaraguan, Cuban territory, and they're just like lobbing balls at each other. Like, it's absolutely nuts. And then he's like, I'm gonna set a flare off. And then Leah Thompson's like, I'll never love again, which is still odd as fuck to me. I had a question.
What is that based on? Is it based on that one sequence when they just have a brief chat about his wife and she's decided there and then that she's fallen head over heels in love with him?
I'll get onto that in the facts.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's just another
question. I want to raise a question about the
ambush.
ambush. Well, it's not. It's more a statement. You never actually see him set the ambushes up. It's just happen. Like when they, how long is it going to take them to dig those little cub holes where they're hiding in? When
Carrying 50 cows around with them.
where the tanks, by the way, goes up to just a normal petrol station and goes, I'm going to fill my tank up with just diesel. She's running away. She runs past the foxholes. And how long did it take them to dig that, to set that up?
I mean,
It did that one in
they were
particular.
coming to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like like it seems so well planned and so perfectly executed. Again, if anything, you brought up the whole Powers Booth thing in terms of him training them up. As far as I can tell, things went bad. I'm starting to think Powers Booth was pretty incompetent because before he showed up, it felt like they were winning the war against the Russians single-handedly. And then as soon as Powers Booth showed up and he starts fighting tanks barehanded, apparently, then of course they all just die immediately because they're like, oh, well, let's follow the grown-up. The only problem is the grown-up is apparently absolutely useless. So yeah, as far as I can see, it all went wrong the moment he showed up.
He so just wants to fuck a 15-year-old. It's absolutely...
Maybe he was just showing off. And again, that was another perfect example of what should have been a great action sequence. You've got two tanks, legitimately two tanks on screen. And I had no idea what was going on. As you say, people are throwing balls. He kind of gets blown up on the top of it. It's one of those things we mentioned before, like a great action scene. One of the things you never notice is like the great geography of a fantastic action scene. You know where everything is. You know where the characters are in relation to each other. You know where the camera is. And then you get a sequence like that. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And it's a really simple action sequence. It's just two tanks. And of course, the idea being that he's setting up like a bombing run or something. But the whole thing is just so clumsily implemented, which is surprising because the director, John Milius, I mean, he did direct Conan the Barbarian, which is a good movie. Yeah. So I don't know what went wrong here.
You said about that, right? Is you got the American tank on the American side, right? And then you got the Russian tank on this side. But Powers Booth told them they were 40 miles behind enemy lines. Mm-hmm. So they traveled 40 miles to the border because that tank was on America's side, the American tank. So they had to travel 40 miles. As Liam said about the geography of the action scene.
Yeah, I mean, they were fighting for land, weren't they? So there's nothing to say the Americans hadn't come that 40 miles and they were just there.
Yeah.
It's a stretch.
Yeah, I was going to say. But Liam's just pissed himself off. And this is from a guy who loves this film. It's just really, really weird. It's sort of like you sit there half the time and you go, what is going on?
Well, the
whole film is a montage. Because it goes from action scene to action scene to ambush to ambush. It's just nobody knows what's going on either. It's just...
Well, that is the thing, right? I understand, why you guys liked it when you were younger. We're a lot more forgiving when we're younger. And this idea is like, oh, they're kids like us, but they're fighting an army. That's kind of cool. As an adult rewatching this film, if you attempt to remove nostalgia, are there many positives you can take from this film if you remove nostalgia? Watching it as a movie today, trying to watch it as, a 39-year-old man, do you watch this and go, no, this is still good? Or you like, this is hanging on by a thread. This is really kind of like, this is all nostalgia at this point. And as a movie in 2022, it doesn't really hold up because even though I had fun with it in a kind of ludicrous, because I love that kind of, like, it's such a ridiculously 80s movie. I mean, it is truly absurd. I've mentioned before that these kind of movies will never get made anymore. The same with like John Hughes movies, which, don't get me wrong, are much better than this. But, they're so kind of sweet almost, despite all the violence, that now you would have to have everybody's winking at the camera. Everybody's in the know. So there's a naivety to movies from the 80s, which is quite sweet, even if everyone's getting blown the fuck up. And you can't have that anymore. So, but beyond that, I'm like, as a movie, I don't like. I'm like, well, the action sequences aren't very good.
Right.
The characters, despite having a great cast, are kind of shit. There's no development. There's not much of a narrative, as Dave said. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. Well, what else? What's actually good about this film?
Dude, go back. You asked a question, then did a Liam, and answered other questions. I have no idea what your question was. Go back to your question.
Try to the first question.
Do you still think, all right, on a simple level, do you still think this is a good film if you remove nostalgia from the equation?
I watched this film with my wife and my father-in-law, right? Now, my father-in-law loves action films, but he likes any action film. So you say to him, well, that film was crap. He goes, yeah, but there was action. You just let it wash over you.
Yeah.
And he liked it, right? So that's probably not a very good barometer.
No, that sounds like a terrible barometer. That sounds like as long as there's a gun in the movie, everything's fine.
Yeah. My wife watched it, absolutely hated it. She was like, there was absolutely no point to that film. Couldn't get into it at all. Played on my phone all the way. But in saying that, she was playing on her phone when the film started. So I don't think she gave it that much of a chance.
So also a terrible barometer. So we're back with just you, buddy.
So what I've given you is two terrible examples. I think you're right. I think to watch it as an adult who's never seen it, you're not going to think it's the best film in the world. I think there's enough there to keep you entertained, but it is what it is. But from our point of view, I still love it.
Yeah, I do. What this film has taught me, though, is if anyone invades Cardiff, I know how to survive now.
Go and hide in the nature reserve.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody's coming for me at all.
Half a mile square.
Yeah.
How would they?
But what happens when you try and fight back? I mean, it's just going to go so wrong.
I mean, to be fair, I am a 6'4" husky gentleman.
Yeah. How many RPGs do you think you're going to get your hands on in Cardiff, Wales? It's going to be, and that's one of the things this movie has at the very start of the movie, before they even get round to stealing weapons from the Russians or the Cubans or the Nicaraguans, whatever. They go into a local store in small town Colorado. And again, it's kitted out like that sports store from Commando. There's so many goddamn guns.
I love it when he says, grab some stuff, and somebody legitimately picks up a box of arrows. It's just a box of arrows.
Because arrows
It's
are
ridiculous.
reusable.
I know, but it's insane. Like, you just grab a box of arrows. And then nobody thought to grab water, because they said this when Danny had to piss in the radiator. But they picked up, 15
Coke.
cases of Coke?
Yeah.
And Sprite, yeah. It was
Sprite.
so American. Well, that's one of the other things that's great about this film. It's such a fantastic representation of Reagan's America kind of thing. It is peak 80s Americana. And again, another shame. Sorry, I keep coming back to being critical of this film. But they've got these beautiful, Colorado's a beautiful part of the world. And somehow this movie makes it look boring. I don't know how they manage it.
It's easy to take over, apparently. Like,
Well, there's a lot of
grab a couple of guys in with some oil drums full of machine guns. You can take everything over.
Well, you think there'd be so many opportunities for guerrilla warfare for people, it's such a large area, so mountainous. You think, the only people fighting back are these 6 kids? Yeah, oh God, it is ludicrous. It is. We're going to have to move on, because otherwise I feel like we're going to shit on this movie all day.
Well,
So,
you got anything else to cover for the film? Let's see if I got any in my notes. I've done the spray paint. I've done the American Friendship Center. They've done a lot in October. We didn't talk a lot about the radio in the freezer. I still think that's odd as fuck.
that is bizarre. That is, in what world does that work?
Plastic bag, and it's frozen, so no one looks for it.
Is it in a plastic bag?
Well, it would be fucked if it wasn't, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, but that's my point. If it's in a plastic bag, I'm willing to maybe go on this journey. But I don't think they ever implied that it
Plastic
was.
bag that gets me. It's the fact it was in a fucking takeaway container.
It came from the Chinese.
Yeah. And he had another one. That's what's funny. We can't take your radio. So I got another one in the freezer.
Yep.
It's next to the binoculars in the fridge.
See, this is another classic example of Rob getting caught up on really weird details in movies. Spoiler alert for next week. Or no, previous week. Sorry, I'm giving up kind of where we're kind of recording in a weird order here. But previously, we recorded Point Break. And if you listen to that episode, you'll know that Rob got very caught up on how quickly Utah and Pappas got their sandwiches.
Right, yeah. You've seen Point Break.
Here we go.
Gary Busey sends Keanu Reeves round the corner to the conveniently placed meatball hut.
To get 2. Utah. Give me 2.
And Johnny Utah orders a tuna on wheat and 2 meatball subs, a lemonade and another drink. And no sooner as he paid and he turned around and saw the car, he turned back, they were there.
Ready-made sandwiches.
Ready-made sandwiches in 30 fucking...
Just in case you can't remember.
Right? These things, they can get pre-made.
Yeah, but you've also been to McDonald's, right? And how many times have you gone, where the fuck is my food?
Yeah, but Dave, just remember, Point Break is the movie where Keanu Reeves jumps out of a plane without a parachute and he's fine. Like that's the same movie, but
Yeah,
Rob
but
picks out the speed of the sandwiches being made. And in this film,
food around Wes, right?
of all the ridiculous things that happen in this film.
It's how quick it was. I fixate on a lot of random things on this podcast.
Okay, let's get to Love and Hate. I'll go first because you guys. I'm interested to hear what you have on Love and Hate, considering you've obviously seen this film so many times. I mean, I do legitimately love how 80s it all is, and that goes right back to the cast, everything about it. As I said, 80s Americana, Reagan's America. I love all that. Leah Thompson just looking gorgeous. Yeah, love that. And I guess it's kind of topical, I suppose, the movie. I guess. I mean, that was me stretching for a third
I love
point.
how, you're clutching at straws there. I love how it's kind of...
Well, the thing is, I want to say it's a movie with like 72 RPGs, which is great, but I just don't feel like many of them are put to good use, sadly. So, yeah, those are my three loves at a stretch.
You got any loves?
Oh, I love it. Makes me feel like a 10-year-old again. You know, every time I watch it, it takes me back to 1994, running around the streets with my toy AK-47. So, you know, I love that. I like the cast. I think it's a decent cast. Probably don't fulfill their potential as much as they could, but you know, it's a decent enough cast. And for me, I'm well into war, so I love the.
Well into war.
I love the planes, and I love all the guns, and it's fascinating to me. There is not much of a story, but there could be zero story whatsoever. As long as there's people on screen with guns and shit, I love it.
Guns and shit.
See, that's the thing. I totally agree with your 2 and 3, but I keep getting caught up with the fact that like I can't get over the disappointment. Like they do have so many weapons, but they use poorly. And as you said with the cast, it's such a great cast, but they just don't get the opportunity to shine in this film, other than maybe Patrick Swayze, who does have his moments. He does have those Patrick Swayzeisms, like a hint of mysticism. But I'm like, you see the poster, and I suddenly look through the cast. I'm like, man, this is a really, really good cast.
Yeah,
this is like the hottest kids in Hollywood in like 1984. But just none of them really get that moment. Like the one for me was Charlie Sheen. I couldn't believe how little screen time he had and how little he had to do. But sorry to jump in there.
He was always with Patrick Swayze. It seemed to be them together.
He just never said anything interesting, sadly.
I'm going to take a page out of Liam's book and kind of take my love, and it's to do with the film, but maybe not. Liam likes to do this a lot. I love the fact this film gave me Wolverines. Like, we've gone paintballing, we've just run around the street drunk, just screaming.
Just in town,
just screaming Wolverines at the top of our lungs. Like, and I'm not even saying when we were 15 or 16, we were 35.
Like last week.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I love the fact it gave me Wolverines. I do like Patrick Swayze in this film. Up to a point, mind. He is really good in this film. He takes charge. But when he becomes loose cannon Patrick Swayze, it becomes a bit much. It's like,
and also, what do we feel about the random and out of nowhere Patrick Swayze whistle? When just out of the blue, he's trying to get everyone's attention and makes the most bizarre noise I've ever heard in my life. Like who's hearing that? Like, you think whistle? Do like, is that the sound of a dying giraffe? But instead he's just like,
I'm over here.
It's like, I'm doing a sparrow at a bird feeder. It's like, who's hearing that, dude? Who is fucking hearing that? Anyway, sorry. I do apologize. Right. Every time somebody mentions something they love, I immediately shit on it. I do apologize.
I can't even get my third fucking love out.
Sorry.
I love C. Thomas Howell as Robert in this.
Oh my God, you don't want me to shit on your choices and you pick C. Thomas Howell. He's fucking terrible.
Oh, he's really good in this, dude. Like just the lines he gives. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's one line the whole thing about how was it? It was good. And like after his first...
It's pretty dark.
When Powers Booth says to him something along the lines of... that hate will burn you up, son. And he goes, keeps me warm.
Yeah, in fairness, jokes aside, he does have he certainly has the biggest character development. As I said, it happens too quickly because it really is front end at the start of the film. But, I like the idea that at least one of the kids kind of like just finds out that he's keen on the idea of murder. And they never kind of, you think, oh, maybe if they killed his family or it became more of a gradual thing. But as soon as he gets that first kill, he's just got bloodlust written all over his face. But yeah. I mean, I think I'm just not the biggest fan of C. Thomas Howell. And also, who gets away with like their first name being just a letter? What the fuck is that game?
Well, he does.
It could be Thomas C. Howell, but C. Thomas Howell? I'm not having that. Sorry.
Should we let you go last for hate? Because you might be going on for a while.
No, I will run it through it quickly. I mean, a lot of the stuff I've already gone through, obviously, but the action sequences being poorly conceived and shot, I struggle to get over that. The questionable politics, which are both kind of good and bad, depending on which way you want to look at it. And again, I know this is stuff we've already mentioned, but the complete lack of character development is a massive issue in this film. So, sorry, I've gone quite serious there in terms of my actual issues with this film. But those are the three big ones for me, for sure.
It's all right. I can bring us back down. It's fine.
All right, cool.
The randomness of Harry Dean Stanton. Just
Yeah,
out of
that's
the
much
blue.
better than mine. Much better.
Like you've got an actor like Harry Dean Stanton, and it's just like boys avenge me, just randomness. That he
Well,
pops
the
in.
weirdest thing is, it was like I was watching that sequence with Harry Dean Stanton again on the basis that I didn't know where it was going. And at first, I'm like, oh my God, Harry Dean Stanton's just here for a paycheck. He looks so disinterested at the start of that sequence. And then all of a sudden, he goes from like a 2, he's simmering at a 2, and goes straight to 11, just out of absolutely nowhere. It's like somebody doubled his pay in a moment. It's like, okay, well, I'll give him a proper performance now. It's such a bizarre turnaround. Very strange. But yes, his whole character is bizarre. And I do struggle with the whole daddy stuff before it as well.
Yeah.
Very creepy.
Daddy.
Daddy.
My other hate is the whole every time you Wolverines do one thing to me, we're going to kill more people. Like there should have been nobody left in the town by the amount of I want to say firing squads that they had.
Well, you only see one actually firing successful, don't you? Because they liberate the other one.
No, I think they had another one, didn't they?
I think there's 2, aren't there?
There's
Okay.
2, and then but
Yeah, I
they
think
kept
it's
hinting you can't keep killing these people. You know what I mean,
Because it's not working.
It's not working. Yeah, and I don't know. My other hate is Danny. Like I don't know what the fuck Danny does. Why
chap.
he's around, or what's the point of it?
All he does is survive. That's it. He just survives.
Yeah,
Like that is his major character trait, is that he survives.
All right, Dave. What are your hates?
To be honest, I don't have a huge amount of hates. It's probably the character development side of it. Like you said, they don't really progress at all, do they? But then, you know, it's not a huge amount of time, reality, so I can let it be. But
I mean, in fairness, there's 2 hours. It's a 2-hour movie. There is plenty of time for a little bit of character development. If this was another classic 80s 90-minute movie and you've got that many action sequences, I might be like, all right, maybe. And there are a lot of characters. I get it if maybe 1 or 2 characters don't get anything and they're just kind of there as, especially like if Danny had died, for instance, no one would have cared. He's just there like in a horror film just to get shot. But instead, you've just got all these characters with nothing to do.
then my argument is there isn't anything for them to do. They kill some Russians, they go back to the woods. They kill some Russians, they go back to the woods. So, I mean, how you eke out story from that, you're fishing if you are, you know. It kind of just is what it is, really. I just think
It is what it is. I love how low a bar you've got. I'm like, I don't know, a screenplay would be a good place to start, but they haven't fucking bothered with that apparently. So, hey ho.
they're not trying to tell an incredible love story. We'll get to that.
No, they're not. They're telling the shittest love story of all time between Powers Booth and Leah Thompson. Legitimately,
there
the
were
worst
more
love story of all time.
Originally,
It
there were more love stories. We'll get to that later. But, you know, they are just telling the story of a bunch of kids trapped killing Russians. So, you know, I'm willing to
And
let
Cubans
it go.
and Nicaraguans.
Dude, that should be such an interesting story in terms of character development. Out of the blue, you've got these kids who are suddenly kind of pushed out of their home. Their parents have been killed. Their home's been taken away. They're forced to live up in the woods. There's so much potential there for great storytelling, which is just ignored wholesale because Dave's like, no, more explosions, please.
But I love the simplicity of the film, right? There's very little backstory given. They don't tell you how it ends. They don't really tell you anything in the middle. They don't really tell you much about the people. It's bare. It's just let's kill loads of people and some of us are going to die.
You didn't even need credits in this film, did you? Just literally, people die, done.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
explosions for 2
And
hours.
a lot of murder. Yeah.
Have you done your 3 hates?
I haven't got any.
Okay,
That's be done.
let's move on to facts then. So I know, Dave, you've really been you had facts for the last couple of episodes you've been on, and we seem to have stolen them from you. So
I'll go first.
You've gone really facts heavy this time. So yeah, you go first.
You'll probably find they're all shit. Oh, I can't do the first one because Liam's already done it. It's the records for the
The best one, yeah, sorry.
violence. So that was that one. William Smith, the Spetsnaz commander who comes in, he was already fluent in Russian because he worked for the CIA.
Oh, nice.
So that was a nice
That's a
one.
pretty good fact. You're not doing bad.
He also has the most mangled up face I think I've ever seen.
Is that a fact?
That is,
Or is that an opinion?
that is a fact.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so the original trailer for the film had Russian soldiers eating at McDonald's, but it was cut from the trailer because there was a mass shooting a couple of weeks before it came out. So they took
They do have a mass shooting, sadly.
They do.
Yeah, but that's weekly, isn't it, for them?
Yeah.
I think it might be.
So Jed and Tony were supposed to have a big love story, but Patrick Swayze asked for it to be removed because he didn't feel it fitted within the film. Probably would have given some good character development.
Was Tony Jennifer Grey?
Yeah.
So he wanted to just do it all in Dirty Dancing.
Well, I'm guessing that's why.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because it did kind of feel like when they have that sequence at the end when Jennifer Grey dies. Is it Tony? Is that her name? Tony. When she dies, it does feel like we should like they're having that moment, and it feels like it's kind of like they have a pre-existing relationship beyond just kind of fighting alongside each other. But of course, we don't see any of that, so it just feels like this weird moment where it's like, okay, they kind of like each other because they hang around together. I suppose.
Put a grenade under.
If you love them, let them go.
If you love them, blow them the fuck up.
Yeah.
That's the way.
Let a Russian yank him by the hair and let him blow up.
Well, I guess this is what this movie does best. Like, why use a bullet when you can use a grenade launcher or a grenade? That's the way to do it.
They had more RPG rockets than they did, I'm guessing, revolver bullets.
100%. 100%. I never saw a handgun get used. They're just using occasional assault rifles, but mostly grenade launchers.
Yeah.
Absurd.
Jed did have a really nice cult Peacemaker, which he finished the Russian off at the end with.
Yes.
See, again, you've made that sound quite gay as well. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? Same as Rob did earlier. Every time Patrick Swayze's finishing someone off, it sounds like he's finishing on their face.
Yeah.
He may well have, I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, God knows.
Where else you go?
Okay, so...
explains the haunted look in his eyes in that final shot when he's carrying Charlie Sheen.
That's why he wanted to die. Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
So other than that love story, there was also supposed to be a love story between Leah Thompson and Powers Booth, as we discussed earlier. But when they previewed it, they found it, not in their words, in my words, a little bit Jimmy Savile. So
it is a little bit gross.
It's quite a big age difference there. And
well, I guess in the film it's not too bad.
As well, it's just all got a bit weird.
Who might be dead in Texas?
They might be.
Yeah.
Enough for him to get off with some 15-year-old in the mountains.
What happens in war stays in war.
I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt in the film. I think he didn't actually look that interested. I think he knew that she was keen, and he's kind of like, I'm still kind of into my wife and
Did you not see the football game where he pulled her down?
No, there is that.
Yeah.
There is that. That was a bit creepy. All right, fair enough. Maybe I won't give him the benefit of the doubt. The one time I try and be positive, Powers Booth wasn't that weird. It's like, no, he was pretty fucking weird. Sorry, carry on with the facts. I do apologize.
So during the Russian invasion of Ukraine recently, this isn't to do with the film per se, but during the Russian invasion, there's been lots of burnt out Russian tanks with the word Wolverines painted on it. So this takes...
Is that true?
That's genuinely true.
It goes into a bit of legacy as well. They're actually painting Wolverines on some of the Russian tanks, yeah.
So big in Ukraine.
Yeah.
The picture of Genghis Khan in the school was actually a caricature of the director, John Milius.
Fair enough. I mean, bizarre, sure.
That's pretty extravagant and, big-headed of him to stick a...
I don't know. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer like M. Night Shyamalan kind of forcing himself in a movie despite the fact that he can't act? I'd prefer to have the director dressed as Genghis Khan. I, for one, didn't notice him, so that's absolutely fine.
I would argue he can't direct or write the fucking screenplay either, but that's just me.
No, perhaps not. But then, like I said, it's bizarre because, he has directed other movies. Yeah. I know him from Conan the Barbarian, and that is a good movie. So, God knows.
I was on about M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
He can't fucking direct or write.
Whoa. Settle down. He can direct.
Trash.
Yeah.
He's a really good director. I'm not having that for a second.
Signs other than that.
No. He's a brilliant... You're mixing up like him being a writer and a director, I think. He's actually a very, very good, very accomplished director, I think. But because he hit it out of the park with that first shot with Sixth Sense, nobody was round to say no. It was kind of like the same thing with George Lucas. He had the same problem because I know you have issues with the Star Wars films because Star Wars is such a big hit. Eventually, with all these other films and all this terrible dialogue, he's got people just saying yes. And of course, M. Night Shyamalan makes these more and more ludicrous movies. Now, there's no one there saying, maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe we won't do Lady in the Water, whatever the fuck it's called. But, as I say, he's fundamentally a good director, just a bit of a questionable story.
This is the most passion I've seen from Liam on the Red Dawn podcast when he's talking about fucking M. Night Shyamalan.
I will defend M. Night Shyamalan as a director. I do like quite a few of his films, actually.
Oh my God. Move on before I just...
Sorry, guys.
It's not him, is it, in... Scary Movie, but when they're doing the rip-off and they've got Charlie Sheen going to see his wife who's dying pinned up against a tree. And the guy who's supposed to be M. Night Shyamalan turns around to him and goes, I'm going to need a lift home. I think that is just the funniest thing.
How we managed to get Scary Movie 3 into this podcast.
Well, I mean, unbelievable. Tenuous Link, it stars Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen's a Red Dawn.
It does. Fair play. But it's just amazing. Not Scary Movie 1. No. Scary Movie 3. That's the one we're going to go for. Fantastic.
My favourite. The last of my facts, Emilio Estevez was originally cast as Jed, but dropped out due to other commitments. And I think probably all say it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Could you imagine him being the leader of the group?
I kind of can. I just don't think it really matter.
I mean, in 1987, he played Billy the Kid because he looked 14.
Yeah, exactly.
This was 1984, so I don't think it would have.
Well, maybe he would have actually looked his age. I mean, that's one of the big problems with Patrick Swayze in this film, isn't it? That he looked about 20 years.
Yeah, but that was it, wasn't it? He was meant to be. He was a bit older, wasn't he?
Yeah, a bit older.
Dad. So he was probably in his 20s at that point, but not that old. But
fair enough.
Right, I've only got
this is the 80s though.
Because this is really 5 of the 36 paratroopers in the beginning of the movie got blown as much as a mile off course during filming. One of them got stuck in a tree. He had to convince locals that he wasn't really an enemy soldier.
So basically, the start of this movie was accidentally like an homage to Deadpool 2 and X-Force, getting blown into the sea, into stores, getting shot as Russian invaders. No, I'm from Colorado. Don't shoot me, Jesus Christ.
Real Green Berets helped with the actors' boot camp training. The reason I bring that up is because Liam thinks that there was no training in this film. There was nothing.
Well, I mean, sure, how many times they've run in front of each other's line of fire? I mean, they're not playing Call of Duty. That will get you dead.
I bet they all had their fingers on the triggers running around. Oof.
Oh, I bet you they did. Yeah, this isn't John Wick.
I've already alluded to this when we were saying about the budget and stuff. There are no computer graphic effects, chroma, key composites, or miniatures in the movie. All of the explosions are real and actual size. So it's all meant to give it that realism.
Well, yeah, that's where the budget went. I know you said 17 million wasn't that much. It's a decent budget for 1984. And you've got to remember, everything else is shot outside in Colorado. So there's no cost going into most of the shots. They spend it all pretty much on the action sequences, on bringing in trucks, and bringing in tanks, and bringing in, well, pretend Heinz, as we're now finding out. And yeah, I just never feel like the money is up on screen as it should be. If you've got those tanks, it should be more impressive.
The tanks, American military tanks, they take the turrets off and put wooden ones on the top to make them look Russian.
Oh, fair enough.
Something I read, it wasn't the best fact in the world, but it's quite funny. They made 2 of these tanks to look like Russian tanks. They put them on the back of a truck. 2 CIA agents saw it, followed them to find out where they got them from. They were that realistic. So, they spent good money on making the vehicles look good. And I think they look fantastic.
You have to remember, I mean, this would have been made in late 83, early 84. This would have been made a few months before, Rocky officially ended the Cold War in Russia himself. So, there was still a lot of suspicion going around. So, you just driving around America with Russian tanks on the back. It's going to raise a couple of fucking eyebrows, isn't it?
Anybody can change. Sorry. Last fact for me, which kind of bleeds into legacy. The code name for the military operation in Iraq that captured Saddam Hussein was called Operation Red Dawn.
Yeah, brilliant. So America, which brings it into a legacy. I guess its legacy as an 80s classic, as this kind of Republican wet dream. I've heard somebody, even liberals, kind of say it's not so much kind of anti-state as it is. I don't know what the quote was, but it's kind of become this kind of political centerpiece when people talk about kind of American nationalism in movies, and obviously people still reference it today, and it's so a movie of its time, maybe more so than any movie from the 80s. So I don't know, I feel like it probably holds a close, it's probably more important in the States than it is over here. I don't think I'm like an outlier in saying that I haven't seen this, but I can imagine most people kind of our age in America probably would have grown up on this.
Can I say as well, mind, what's this now? This is episode 70, 80 something, whatever we're on at the moment.
Yeah.
Can I just say, right, of all the films that we've covered on this podcast, and of all the films that I've suggested that you've never watched, Buckaroo Banzai, The Wraith, Charlie Sheen again, you've never seen Red Dawn. For some reason, that surprises me. I don't know why, because
No,
you're
it does.
a Commando
It does.
fan, you're a Predator fan. You
Mhm.
like this kind of feels like those kind of films you would have watched. I'm really surprised
Yeah,
if this passed you
it's
by.
got that sort of B movie sort of action feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. If I've seen Red Scorpion, I should have seen Red Dawn.
Fucking
You know,
Red
it's like-
Scorpion is the barometer of bad films.
Red Scorpion
Exactly.
ruined us choosing a film on a Saturday night. When the whole group used to get together and me and Dave would choose a film, it usually was all right. People would like, but then again, it
They
wasn't.
dig it enough,
Yeah,
yeah.
they didn't like the films. And we were always like, Red Scorpion. Oh my God, we loved this as a kid. Best, like, all 80s film.
But hadn't seen it since we were kids.
Hadn't seen it since we were kids. We got maybe 45 minutes into the film, which is probably a push. And we both
yeah, I think so.
both looked at
nowadays.
each other, then looked at the rest of the group and went, "We're sorry, let's turn this off." Like, it's awful, dude.
Yeah, you got. In fairness, I mean, that's very gentlemanly of you to know when to pull the plug, because you know we've all got those movies, and of course that's part of what this podcast is about. And in fairness, we haven't picked too many stinkers, but you know, I've watched movies
Star Wars.
with
Star Wars.
with my wife, who I hadn't mentioned on this podcast until now. Obviously,
No,
So,
Dave
you know,
actually stole your wife comment earlier on. Oh, what's this with my wife?
I didn't.
Oh
see
well, yeah, somebody's got to mention their wife.
Yeah, don't steal.
But
my
no,
wife.
there have been movies I've rewatched where I'm like, I'm still enjoying it because of the nostalgia attached to it. But I'm like, man, this must be rough for my wife. But we've not watched anything anywhere near as bad as Red Scorpion. Nowhere near. Like, you know, we talked recently about the fact that maybe one day we'd do Jean-Claude Van Damme's Cyborg. Now, that's a film I've not seen for probably 25, 26 years.
Yeah,
and
nine years to me.
I suspect that isn't going to hold up particularly well. But, you know, I'm willing to go back to it and roll dice. The other one was Robot Jocks, a movie I adored as a kid.
Well, that's
I'm pretty
that's coming up,
confident.
though, isn't it? That's episode 100.
Yeah, I can't.
Robot
I
Jocks.
don't know why we agreed to do Robot Jocks as episode 100, but yeah, it's not as far. I think it's because it always seems so far away.
Right now.
I think in my head, I was just like, we'll never reach episode 100. There's no. Yeah, Rob, we'll do Robot Jocks episode 100, kid. No problem at all. All of a sudden, I'm like, fuck, we're creeping up on episode 100,
And we
and you
gotta
have to
do
watch
Robot
fucking
Jocks.
Robot Jocks.
Yeah.
How about this? We'll commit right now. If we somehow make it to episode 200, we'll do Red Scorpion.
Oh
Oh,
God!
fucking hell.
100%. 100%.
Okay,
So
all right.
episode 100 is Robot Jocks. Jesus Christ, that almost certainly will happen. And somehow, if we get to episode 200, we'll do Red Scorpion
I want to be involved
as our
in Red
penance
Scorpion.
for wasting this much time. Sorry?
I think you need to get a panel for Red Scorpion.
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
be there.
yeah.
Bring your mate. We'll get some other people involved. Yeah,
I don't know how you get a
needs
panel
lots
of.
of opinions.
I don't know how you get a panel of people who've seen Red Scorpion. But no, to bring it back to your point, though, it is bizarre that I've seen, you know, we've got this huge crossover of movies that we watched in our youth. Obviously, you've gone a little bit further down the rabbit hole with sequels and stuff. But for the most part, we're on a, you know, same kind of ballpark for sure. But for some odd reason, as I said, Red Dawn was just never on my radar. I knew it was a thing, but I think it was just because maybe it was never on TV. Or it could have been something as simple as Cardiff Video Centre, which we brought up on previous podcasts, was this, I think it was one of the biggest video stores in the UK when it was released, massive place. And I can't remember Red Dawn being in there because there are certain films where I haven't seen them, but I remember like the video cases.
Yeah.
I have no memory of the Red Dawn video case sitting there and me ignoring it. So perhaps they didn't have it, which could be as good a reason as
Maybe
any
it was
for me
in the
not seeing
beaded
it.
room.
It might have been.
It could have been in the beaded room. For those who don't know, the beaded room was the old porno room.
Everyone knows the beaded room. You say beaded room, everyone knows.
Oh
what
my
it is.
God, you say that like everybody's like the best part of 40 years old, or in my case, exactly 40 years old.
Half your
Like,
listeners.
dude, I
probably
reckon if you're 25 years
on
old,
Netflix.
Yeah.
So,
if
yeah.
you went up to a 25-year-old kid, and when I say kid, I mean adult, 25-year-old adult, and you said, do you know what the beaded room is in a VHS store? They might be like, well, one, what's a
What the fuck
VHS
is a
store?
VHS? Yeah.
And then two, no, I have no idea what the beaded. Well, you had to. It's where the porn was. You mean the porn on your phone? No, I'll forget about it. That conversation's going nowhere.
Liam's lived in Edinburgh now for what 15, 16
15
years now. Yeah.
Wow.
He seems to have lost his Cardiff Welsh accent to the point, but when he says video,
Is that where it comes through?
Yeah.
Go on.
Maybe it's when I get passionate about it. And if I'm talking about Cardiff Video
Give us a
Centre,
video.
Yeah, say Cardiff Video Store again.
Cardiff Video Centre. It's when I say Cardiff.
No
of
one
course.
says Cardiff like you do.
Cardiff.
Cardiff.
Or Park, as I was told. When I was talking about Jurassic
Oh
Park.
yeah, Jurassic Park. That's when he really sounded Cardiff. That's when it really came. Most of the time, I just forget about it, and then he just kept saying Jurassic Park, and I was like, wow.
Right. Are we actually in a fucking section now? Are we in
Yeah, we're still in Legacy. So
Okay.
obviously, one of the I guess there was a remake in 2012. I don't
Which
think
I will
anyone went to
say,
see it.
we actually went to the cinema to watch together.
Yeah.
Oh
right.
my! And then it's like Thor is in it. Like Chris Hemsworth is in this movie.
Yeah. So Chris Hemsworth filmed it in 2010. MGM went bankrupt. He filmed it with Cabin in the Woods, but MGM went bankrupt. And then they released it after Thor. They released it in 2012 on the back of Thor. It was a decent cast. We actually enjoyed it. And it falls under what we said a couple of weeks ago as well around Point Break. It falls under that remake curse where it's, if it didn't have the name, it might be, it'd be received a bit better. Total Recall, Point Break.
RoboCop.
Well, Red Dawn, not RoboCop because that's shit. However you...
RoboCop's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine.
I watched that not long ago. It's ass.
It's I think it's that again. I think I actually rewatched Total Recall. It was just on a couple of days ago. I watched like 15 minutes of it, and it actually felt worse than I remembered. But I do think your point stands up in so much that if they were just kind of like, if no one had ever heard of Total Recall before, no one had ever heard of Red Dawn, I think most people, I think the reviews would almost certainly I'm not saying they would get great reviews, but they would be better than what they were, because everyone's immediately, they've already got the knives out. They're like, oh, this isn't as good as Verhoeven. This isn't as good. It's lost all of its 80s charm. It's like already it's on the back foot. They have to convince people why it's good. And I'm not going to say, Point Break, Jesus Christ, Red Dawn, the remake is a good film because I haven't seen it. But I know it was critically slaughtered. But I totally agree with you. If it wasn't a remake, it probably would have got slightly better reviews.
Yeah,
it's got 15 on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's people don't like the film,
and it's
no, and it did bomb hard.
Yeah, but it seems to have you had a string of taking those R-rated 80s films and making them watered down 12A.
But say that this was a PG-13.
Look at it now as a 12.
Yeah, so it's about the same thing, isn't it? So it was never like with my big thing with RoboCop was the remake is so fucking watered down. It hasn't got the action, the gore, the nastiness
to the point
to it.
Where he's basically just killing robots.
It's pretty weak,
Yeah.
It is. I feel like there's fundamentally a decent film.
Hardcore, There's a guy melting from toxic waste in front of your eyes. You don't get any of that in there.
Well, no, I mean, it removes the satire. It removes the ultraviolence. The ultraviolence being, of course, a key part of said satire. It kind of misses the point of the movie and just turns it into a generic 3-star. I would argue 3-star kind of action movie. I actually think. Well, I think a big part of that. I actually think. Maybe because I'm a big fan of this, the guy who plays RoboCop in the movie,
Joel Kinnaman.
I think Joel Kinnaman's really good.
Fantastic.
And that film's got a great cast.
He is absolutely amazing in Altered Carbon season 1. Fantastic actor. And
I think he's good as Murphy. I totally buy him as like a tough cop. I think he's actually quite good.
His lips aren't thin enough.
Yeah, fucking he's obsessed with his. Oh yeah, you are obsessed with Peter Weller's mouth.
He's got a great mouth. I mean, like you said, it comes into the same category as Michael Keaton with Batman. They're these guys, they're not the most handsome, but they've just got great mouths. So
put Peter Weller's mouth.
Now he's gone gay.
Put Peter Weller's mouth. Put Peter Weller's mouth on Leah Thompson and Liam of the clothes.
This is your fault because before I always just thought of him as a mouth because, he's just RoboCop. And jokes aside, we talked about this before. You've seen the adverts when they bring back RoboCop. You saw what happened with RoboCop 3. If you don't have the right mouth, it looks horrible. Like something happens. Like you take it for granted that RoboCop or Batman look right when you've got the right chin, the right mouth in it.
To be fair, you do need the right mouth.
You just need the right mouth. But no, I mean, a big issue was it was your fault because I never noticed before until I watched Buckaroo Banzai. And I was saying, like, man, in 1980, whatever it was, I was like, Peter Weller was a handsome fucking dude. Yeah. And I think it's just because he's cool as shit in that film. Like the sequence with the guitar and stuff. He's just
still one of my favorite films ever. And every person, I'm 100% because I've only ever got you two to watch it. But Buckaroo Banzai, I'm 100% the people love it when I get them to watch it.
I mean, the film might as well not be there. It's just about the song and the walk at the end.
Oh yeah. It really is. It really is. But no, you are like again. We're not talking.
Oh yeah, let's get back to Red Dawn.
Back to Red Dawn. I mean, when we went to watch it, I enjoyed it. It's the same problem with the original. There's not a huge amount of story to it, but that's
it's only 90 minutes.
Yeah, they're trying to portray the same thing, but there's certain parts of it which I think made it slightly better, like. The guy who betrayed his friends and then they stuck the chip in him and they tracked him in the remake, rather than...
Is that Daryl?
Yeah, rather than just puss out and get shot by his mate, he takes his mate's big belt-fed machine gun, gets his mates to all go, and he holds down the fort and buys him time to escape. So he has a bit of a heroic end, which is good.
Yeah. They try to as well give Jed a bit more, don't they? Because Liam's raised a lot about Jed and Patrick Swayze in this film, but Chris Hemsworth's Jed in the remake, they've actually made him a veteran.
Yes, he's just come back.
He's just come back from war, so that's why he's able to lead them, and that's why he's able to do the guerrilla tactics and things like that.
And they managed that in a 90-minute movie.
Good,
yeah, sorry.
This is nearly 100. Well, they managed. I mean, again, I've not seen it, but that sounds like genuine character development in what is a 90-minute movie. This movie is nearly 2 hours long.
They bring Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Negan from The Walking Dead, into it, and he doesn't want to fuck a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
So
all of a sudden now you're kind of convincing me. I'm like, do I kind of want to watch the Red Dawn remake?
He isn't a shutdown pilot either. He's one of 3 special forces guys who come in to give them help.
Sure.
So what to help the Wolverines?
What did you say? It was 15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
I kind of want to rewatch it.
I've been trying to find it this last week. I can't find it on any platform.
See, that's the thing, right? I'm saying this now. It's like, I might watch Red Dawn the remake, but the reality is, I'll just end up watching Hot Tub Time Machine again, because really, that's the only reference I ever really knew to Red Dawn was from really, Hot Tub Time Machine.
It's a really good change of story, I think, rather than just loads of soldiers turn up and America don't do anything about it until they fight in their own country. It was originally supposed to be China. China kicked off, so they turned it into North Korea. So they had to change all the posters digitally.
They tell you North Korea, but it becomes nondescript Asian country.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But they've got this new weapon that it's like an EMP type thing that effectively knocks the country out. So they can't fight back.
Fucking hell, you've seen this film once, yeah?
I watched the trailer earlier.
Okay.
That's all
I was going to say, Jesus Christ, you've got this in memory. We watched it in 2012.
It's a much better idea, because there's absolutely no way, right, that they would have knocked out America's nukes and they wouldn't have fought back. I mean, they've got submarines full of nukes. I'd imagine they just pack nukes in suitcases and in their beds and things. They 100% would have fired back on Russia. Because again, I was being a bit geeky earlier. I was Googling it and talking to Wes, and I found a map of World War III from 1984. So somebody has put a map together, and it shows which countries were with Russia, which countries were with America, who was being occupied. They even showed nuclear strikes. So the brunt, apparently, is China and most of Asia. There's like 15, 20 nuclear attacks over there. Me personally, never really realized that China was a massive ally of America.
That's what they mentioned this. I mentioned the strange geopolitics of this movie, especially as you look at it now, because one of the big good guys outlined is China. I was like, well, how times have changed.
Yeah.
But you've done so much better, a much better job than this movie ever did of explaining the geopolitical kind of outlook of the world at this time. So it's all of a sudden I'm a little bit keen on this movie. I bizarrely really, really want to watch Red Dawn the remake. Yeah. And of course, as you were saying all that, I was like, man, Hot Tub Time Machine really is a good fucking movie. Yeah. So maybe I'll just watch that again as well.
You were thinking Hot Tub Time Machine. All I was thinking about as you were talking then, Dave, was I probably need to tell our listeners that I'm Wes, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking that.
Myself as Rob. You keep saying I'm watching it with Wes, and they're all going, who the fuck? I mean, all of them. Our 7 listeners.
In fairness, it took me about 3 years to realise your name was Rob.
It's quite bizarre. I tell you what, I don't think they ever mention it directly, but there's almost a hint of the Red Dawn about the kids in Stranger Things season 4 as well. The same way that the kids in, again, Hot Tub Time Machine freak out and they go, oh, it's all Red Dawn, and there's like a can of Red Bull or something like that, and they think it's from Russia. The way they react to these kind of weird kids almost has that kind of ultra Republican Red Dawn vibe to it as well. But yeah, I'd say that kind of is the ultimate kind of legacy of this film, sadly, is it being this Republican poster child for 80s Americana and Reagan's America. But I keep saying Reagan's America. I do apologize.
Soundtrack?
Yes, sure. It's by Basil Polidoris. He's popped up a few times. Well, RoboCop, more specifically, our film we've already covered. Conan the Barbarian, another one of this director's work. Hunt for Red October. So, he's done a lot of work, and I think the score is decent in and of itself. But I think it struggles with the inconsistent tone of the movie, and the first half definitely plays into like the jingoism of the kind of, the first half, as I said, that whole Team America thing. I actually think that the score is a more natural fit in the second half of the film when it kind of settles into a more, a darker kind of interpretation and more the impacts of war.
I know
that's when I think the score feels a little bit more natural, because there are a few points when they're obviously, committing these attacks on the Russian army, and the score makes it even more ridiculous than it is.
Jovial.
Yeah, jovial. That's the perfect word for it. It almost feels jovial.
You notice the score more in the second half. But I say, second half, the last third, especially during Jed and Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Jed and Matty's attack on the train yard and everything like that.
Their two-man commando-esque attack on the train yard.
Also, sorry, going back really quickly, did Jed ever use any of those bullets that were on his bandolier?
No,
because
I don't think so.
You count them; they're the same.
That was.
It's just for luck. It's just for luck.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'm tough.
But yeah, while the score is fine, the one thing this movie actually, especially the first half, was really missing was like a legitimate 80s banger of a montage. Like, this movie really needed a montage to explain how they're getting that. And you just thought, like, maybe it wouldn't have been suitable considering where the movie goes. But at that, like, if you'd asked me like 40 minutes into this film, I'm like, God, this movie is screaming out for a montage.
Randomly, do you know what song would have fitted perfectly for this?
What's that?
Win in the End from Teen Wolf.
Oh, that would have been great. That would have been fucking perfect. Win in the end. 40 minutes into this movie, as they all learn how to be better soldiers, that would have been absolutely fantastic.
Because we're going to win in the end.
But it's weird, because there's certain moments, like when the guy goes mental and gets shot by the helicopter. Yeah. Like, it's really like patriotic. It's the type of thing the NRA would play.
Yeah.
One of their rallies, and something I read about John Milius when he was saying that when the film came out, a load of left-wing people came out and started picketing outside MGM, and they were saying, this is too right-wing, and you're saying we should be fighting Russians and everything. And he said, that's not what the film's about. He said, watch it. It's just about being patriotic and what we would do. And he made this quip about, I'll probably get given some kind of award by the right wing next week. And 2 weeks later, the NRA tried to give him a special award, which he wouldn't accept. So, he wasn't trying to go right wing, but it kind of just it epitomizes the gun owning middle American thing at the time, and probably still now, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's as I said, it's so weird tonally, because the first half, it's hard to, regardless of what he was aiming for, that's certainly how it comes across, as kind of like, the good guy with a gun vibe that they go for in America. It's pure NRA fucking wet dream stuff in the first half. Then it was almost like the Republicans just kind of stopped paying attention for 40 minutes when things start going off the rails and all starts getting a little bit dark. But then they kind of tune back in for those final credits when everyone looks like a hero and stuff. They're like, oh no, I like this bit as well. So I can imagine there's a whole bunch of VHSs where there's like the first 60 minutes, then there's like 30 minutes of their cousin getting married in Utah, and then it cuts back to them all in their heroic poses at the end of the movie. So, quite bizarre, to be honest. In terms of video games, well, the thing is, there basically is a video game already of this movie called Homefront by THQ and Digital
Fucking
Extremes.
Great game.
Settle down, it's fine.
Hang on,
Homefront's actually by John Milius, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the book is by John Milius, which is bizarre, but then the video game had nothing to do with him.
Was it first person or third person, Homefront?
First person.
Then I'm getting that confused with another game.
Yeah, well, when you went in 2-footed on that, Homefront's an amazing game, I was like, oh no, man, Homefront's pretty bang average, is probably being quite kind.
Third person game, I never remember the name of it. But about America.
Spec Ops the line?
About America getting taken over.
Freedom Fighters?
That might be Freedom Fighters.
That's quite a bit older, that is. But no, Homefront is based on a book by John Milius. He had no involvement in the game, but it's basically the same story. Very, maybe thematically more successful than this movie is.
Yes, it is.
Like there were some good ideas from the book in the game, but it's just not a fantastic game, sadly. But in terms of, basically,
so it's probably more. It's about North Korean's invasion.
So yes, it is.
It's probably more like the remake than the original.
Yeah, it is. But, it's the same kind of concept. But basically, I don't want those guys making, my kind of modern day version of Red Dawn. So if I was like, all right, what do I want from a modern day Red Dawn video game. And basically, I was thinking, just take Ben Studios and Days Gone, replace the zombies with Russians. Bob Drunkle, I think you've got the perfect game there.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's in the right place. It's definitely got that right tone in terms of, middle Americana kind of thing. You move it to the 80s. Like I said, maybe keep the zombies. I don't give a fuck. They're quite fun. But definitely throw in a couple of Russians. And I think you've pretty much got the perfect Red Dawn video game there. Maybe a bit more social commentary.
Who did Modern Warfare? Was it Activision or Infinity Ward?
Well, Infinity Ward for Activision. Activision, the publisher, in Infinity Ward, the developers.
Yeah, but Modern Warfare changes developers every other year, doesn't it?
Yeah, but Activision always kind of overseeing it because they're the publishers. Infinity Ward did develop... They developed, Infinite Warfare, whatever it was.
Well, whoever did Modern Warfare...
Modern Warfare, sorry, I was mixing up.
Whoever did Modern Warfare, that's basically what you want from a Red Dawn game, is Modern Warfare. In my opinion. So I would just take a first-person Call of Duty-esque game and just blow shit out of the Russians, Nicaraguans, and Cubans.
So I think more of it has to be about surviving. That's why I kind of thought maybe if it's an open world game, you have that element of like saving people and kind of like collecting goods, stealing weapons, stealing RPGs. You've got to have RPGs.
Sorry, I'm not saying my idea was better. I would totally go with your idea all day, but I'm giving you an idea as well. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm giving you the idea.
He's very defensive about Call of Duty. I do apologize. Dave, quickly jump in before the podcast goes off the fucking rails.
Call of Duty 3.
Call of Duty 3. Yeah, brilliant.
Call of Duty 3, there it is. All right, so that's it for the movie. This is going to be the most interesting part, ratings and recommendations. So I'm going to go first and say I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. I just wouldn't. I really do think you need a nostalgia attached to this film. I don't think I'd go out to any of my friends and say you need to watch Red Dawn in 2022. Maybe the remake, now you kind of sold me on it, but definitely not the 1984 original. And a rating, 2 out of 5.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've explained why. It's totally understandable. You can't really, this is the kind of film, as we've already established, because you haven't watched it as a kid, where nostalgia is going to have a big part of it. Although I may differ from Dave on here, whereas I do love this film, but I probably wouldn't recommend it to others due to the fact that I understand like the whole nostalgia side of it, the whole
unlike Dave, who's a bit slow.
Yeah, the whole nostalgia side of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
the whole kids killing people thing. It's just, unless you've seen it as a kid and you felt something different as a kid when you moved on, like, yeah, it's not a film that you would probably recommend to others. But I don't agree with your 2.
That's fair enough.
And you're going to hate it, but it's a 3.5. It's a very good film. There's a lot that could be better about it, obviously, but it's definitely not in the lower half of the rating. It's a 3.5.
So we'll settle on a 3, yeah. So that's a 2 out of 5 and a 3 out of 5.
Well, for that then, it's a 4.
I thought you might go that way. Yeah. In fairness,
I'm going to look at it in 2 different ways. For me personally, nostalgia-wise, it's absolutely 5 out of 5 because it is just. It takes me back to
bold.
No. I'm not going with this. I'm just.
I know.
What I feel. It takes me back to much happier days running around the streets pretending to shoot Russians behind cars, and I do still love it, and I get as much enjoyment now as I did back then. But
now, when he's shooting Russians behind cars, it's a different story. Yeah,
people it gets a bit weird, Russians, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I never used to get arrested, but now what the fuck?
Political correct.
That's ridiculous.
But I fully understand your point, and I think people watching it now won't enjoy it anywhere near as much as me and Wes do. So I think I would recommend it wholeheartedly, knowing that most people aren't going to enjoy it as much as I do. But
recommend it anyway.
I think if you're going to rate it, I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Nice. I mean, in all fairness, we did recommend Red Dawn.
Yeah.
No, Red Scorpion. Sorry, Red Scorpion.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely.
We should be shot like Russians, apparently.
This is definitely a better movie than Red Scorpion. And just to be clear, I have shat on this movie, and to say
really?
It's easy,
I hadn't noticed.
I know. Well, I mean, to say this movie is easy to pick apart would be a massive understatement because that's pretty much all we've spent this time. Most of our time doing.
It has given us some great content.
And
it has. And the thing is,
I don't think it's great. But that's the thing. No, I do think it's great. But I don't think it's a very good film.
It's nostalgia.
To sort of tell everyone about.
But films like this, when you grew up with them, you will find it hard to separate the two. You try and be a bit more critical on this kind of platform.
You
But-
never go into this detail normally.
No.
And, you know, when I was trying to write notes just for stuff to remember, there's sod all on the page because not a lot happens, to be honest.
The problem,
But what does happen, I find really entertaining, and I can geek out on all the military shit.
yeah,
So, you know,
and the problem I have when I'm writing notes about even films I love, I always pick the things that make me laugh or don't make sense. When we look at this part, I mean, fucking a meatball sandwich. Do you know what I mean? It just, I always pick these fucking things that just don't make sense to me and just carry on with them. So I do totally agree with that. A 3.5, 2. I'd say they are perfect enough scores for this film.
I think average out of the 3 is probably fair.
Yeah, I mean, jokes aside, I don't feel particularly shocked. Like you saying 3, especially when you've got that kind of connection to it, I totally understand it because as bad as this film is, and it is quite bad, it's still quite fun. And part of that is the cast, the fact that it is so relentlessly 80s. It's an absurd film. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the kind of film that would never get made in this way in 2022. We just will never see the likes of Red Dawn in this format ever again, especially, you know, considering the way things have gone in the last few years with political correctness and all these other things, you know, whatever your views might be on them, it does mean that a movie like this just isn't going to get made in this format. So it was a 2, but it was kind of an enjoyable 2. But yes, that was 1984's Red Dawn. Next week, we are doing a slightly better movie, dare I say, Terminator 2 next week. It's taken a long time to come around, but we finally got Dan Goldsworthy, who joined us on the last Terminator podcast. You know, I think we all agreed Terminator was a fantastic movie. Is Terminator 2 better? Spoiler alert. Yes, I think it is.
The one question we have to ask Dan, because Dan has told us that he watches Terminator every Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So I've stolen this off Dave, but I am asking this question when we speak to him. If Terminator was his Christmas film, is Terminator 2 his New Year's film? Like, is this what happens? Is he just watching these every year? Just like,
I feel like if you watch Terminator, you kind of want to get around to Terminator 2. But if anything, for me personally, like I've seen Terminator quite a few times. Terminator 2 is up there with the most watched films of my life. I have seen Terminator 2 so many times, and it is a classic rewatchable in so much that there's like a handful of movies out there where it doesn't matter what point of the film it is. If I turn on the TV and it's on, I'm off to the races. I don't think I've ever stopped watching Terminator 2. I've always watched Terminator 2 to completion, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean I've always started from the beginning, but like halfway through, 3/4, it doesn't matter. I'm watching it up until the end credits. It's just,
I love Jeanette Goldstein in this.
yes.
She is fantastic. I mean, she's brilliant in everything.
Yeah.
I mean, she's always like tiny little bit parts.
I love how you say everything. After Aliens and this, name another film.
She's in, what's the one with the vampires?
Near Dark.
Near Dark.
Fuck me, we've done that film as well.
Yeah,
I
know that one.
Right, we're moving on.
Yeah, we're moving on. Anyway, so yeah,
She's also in Lethal Weapon 2. She's one of the policewomen.
Can't fucking remember that.
She's the one on the springboard that blows
Dude,
up.
all I can remember
Of course
from
she
Lethal Weapon 2 is diplomatic immunity. That's
Lethal
it.
Weapon-
Diplomatic immunity.
Lethal Weapon 2 is because you did Lethal Weapon with us last Christmas. So when
That's such a better film.
when Liam comes down for Christmas in Cardiff, we'll do Lethal Weapon 2 together. Should we, mate?
Sounds like a good shout. But yeah, we need to wrap up this bloody podcast. So yes, this has been Red Dawn. Next week will be Terminator 2. We hope you're joining us for that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the movie more than I did. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
So where can people actually find us?
Oh, well, people can actually find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. You can also drop us an email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. We like to read them out on the show, so please feel free to send them in. Any recommendations, just get in touch with us. We do like that. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing.
Cheers, Derry. And a big thank you to Alexander Ortolan for the awesome intro music. He has no media presence as far as I can tell. He's very mysterious, but makes great music. So thank you very much.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Wolverines!
Not expecting that.
Hey, you guys!